Time for the next body paragraph. How does it open? In addition to deregulation, that was this idea. If we reflect upon our thesis, I should be talking about the failure of the Electricity Council by mentioning the old and marrying it to the new, right? That's what's called, if you remember, a transition. Transitions carry the reader from one topic of discussion to the next. It's a good thing to have. Was the failure of Texas Electricity Council. Unlike most states that share a power grid allowing the transfer of electricity from one state to another when needed, Texas has its own independent power grid, ERCOT, Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which covers 90% of the state. So yeah, you heard that narrative leading into my direct quote. A consequence of being an independent power grid means Texas has no alternate source of electricity. Here's noted in his article, Texas Power Grid Failure, Why More Heads Need to Roll. ERCOT was supposed to force large users of power, such as factories, to shut down during a power emergency to help supply electricity to homes and businesses. What did I have here? This was a paraphrase. And you'll notice there's nothing here in the end of the sentence because that information is where? It's part of the narrative. It's part of the signal phrase. However, ERCOT failed in this respect as ERCOT said it did not know what specific users were shut off. And instead, power was shut off to power plants and infrastructure. Okay, so that was direct quote built into the narrative, right? Just flowing into the paragraph. In other words, ERCOT mistakenly cut electricity to the power plants themselves as other energy sources were being crippled by the extreme cold. And then here I have my concluding sentence, which I already have written. Clearly, the poor actions of the Electricity Council, ERCOT, were a reason for the loss of power. Those were, now notice what did I start off with? Cause. I had two, right? You might have just one, but causes go in the front and then the effects or the results follow. So we have to keep in mind that flow, the natural flow of cause and effect of causal analysis paper. So the third topic for body paragraph 3 comes from third point in my thesis. And just as before, I'm going to open up with a wonderful transition. While the effects of the February 2021 outage include deregulation in ERCOT, its outcomes included proposed changes to the power grid. One involves moving from a microgrid, such as in Texas, to a macro grid, uniting many states in a single power grid. McCallie writes, so what do we have here? I'm leading into a direct quote, the narrative, also called a signal phrase. A microgrid would make it possible to share energy production and grid surfaces between regions and would actually become more reliable because it provides increased grid control capability. You might be wondering, what's going on with the brackets, Mr. K? We use brackets to show added words in a direct quote. It's okay to do that. Sometimes you have to do that. Otherwise, it'll be clunky and it really won't have flow to it. Another proposal is building redundancy into the grid, including power plants that would run only during electricity emergencies. Again, have the direct quote, right? Signal phrase, what is also called narrative. In addition, plans are being made for giving more money for winterization and other reliability measures. Yep, we know what's going on here, guys. Direct quote, signal phrase. Why do I include this information inside the parenthetical citation? Excuse me, because it's not listed in the signal phrase. And then what do we finish with? Our concluding sentence, which we already have written. Though the results of the power loss are many, changing the power grid will likely prevent another such event from happening. Boom, got the body done. What is it time for? It's time to say goodbye. I know. So what should happen here? Our conclusion. Should summarize, should restate the thesis but not repeat it. And remember, when we're ending, don't open up a new can. No new ideas. Though there were many causes for the power outage that hit Texas in February 2021, including extreme weather, the deregulation from 20 years earlier, as well as the failure of ERCOT, right? What do you hear? You hear there the restatement of my thesis. I'm taking those points and pulling them out to be sentences, resulting in the loss of power for more than 2 weeks. This caused hardships for thousands and hundreds of deaths. As Dustin Worland notes, the storm laid bare how fragile Texas power grid really is. A result of this is the proposal of moving Texas from a microgrid to a macrogrid, which Texans hope will prevent such a catastrophe from occurring again. I did it. Conclusion, word count within the range. Awesome, but we're not quite done yet. We'll take a look at the reference page and see how I did on using those signal words in the next video.